Amalia Mesa-Bains' Archaeology of Memory is the first retrospective exhibition dedicated to the pioneering artist, curator, and feminist educator Amalia Mesa-Bains. Born in 1943 in Santa Clara, California, Mesa-Bains belongs to a groundbreaking generation of Chicanx artists who, together with other artists of color, led the critique of Eurocentric, sexist, and classist art histories and museum practices. Deeply rooted in her experience of growing up in an undocumented immigrant Mexican family, Mesa-Bains counters the colonial legacies of violence, repression, and erasure by finding spiritual and psychological healing in the act of remembering. Since the 1970s, Mesa-Bains joined the Chicanx cultural reclamation of altar building to honor indigenous spirituality and ancestral traditions. Guided by Oaxaqueña Chicana artist Yolanda Garfias Wu, she began creating historical homages to women using aspects of domestic altars and ofrendas. These innovative installations reimagine libraries, laboratories, gardens, and landscapes to explore historical moments in Chicanx and Latinx culture. In these spaces, Mesa-Bains layers personal experience and collective cultural memory through the accumulation of everyday found objects, personal items, and evocative materials. Archaeology of Memory explores two abiding threads in Mesa-Bains' art: the life-sustaining work of remembering and the archaeological process of reconstructing personal and collective histories marginalized by dominant cultural erasers. The show foregrounds how Mesa-Bains intervenes in academic and institutional knowledge by reclaiming Chicanx, Mexican, African American, indigenous, and women's narratives. The exhibition is anchored by the artist's multi-chapter Venus Envy installations, which are presented together for the first time in this show. Archaeology of Memory also presents the artist's codices, handmade books, and digital collages that explore ancestral agricultural as well as medicinal knowledge and the long history of migration in the Americas. As with her larger installations, these works feature her distinctive archaeological aesthetic of layering and excavation, a methodology that centers the importance of generational knowledge and embodied experience.
My name is Amalia Mesa-Bains. I'm a Chicana artist from California, and I have been making art for over 50 years. My practice is an unusual one. I came up during the Chicano movement, in which people essentially were assigned roles, and my role was as an altarista, or someone who would make home altars within the community settings, or contribute to the Days of the Dead by the construction of ofrendas or offerings to the dead. So in other words, my career and my way of working developed within the trajectory of the community-based organizations for which I was a participant, sometimes an advocate. And when I think back on my work now, I see that it never really conformed to the art world. During the 80s, and I've been working since the early 70s, I was absorbed under the rubric of installation art. I watched this evolution in myself, and I began to think about doing the work in a broader context, not just as a spiritual practice, but as a political and historical intervention. And from that point on, I also extended the sacred into landscapes, what I call the geography of memory. I extended into cabinets of curiosity my versions of laboratories and libraries, interrogations of history, particularly around 1992, when many of us mounted counter-quincentennial projects across the country, and I was involved in a number of them. So what is going on in this exhibition, which is my first retrospective, which began just as I turned 80, is the first look at a number of the larger pieces together. And now here at Museo del Barrio, a place I hold dear to my heart because I've been involved with Museo since really the late 80s, early 90s. So in a certain sense, it feels like a homecoming for me to have my work here, work that spans multiple cultures. I'm sitting in front of Queen of the Waters, Mother of the Land of the Dead, an homage to Guadalupe, the Virgen de Guadalupe from Mexico, but also is an homage to Yamaya, to other spiritual figures that are touched on by the idea of water and memory. The river, what it gave to me is a piece about crossing borders. The Circle of Ancestors is about a conversation between 7 women, beginning in Coelchalki in the Mesoamerican age and going all the way through to present time. So these pieces deal with time, memory, land, rights, justice, and I think to some degree spiritual hope and faith. All of these things, I think, contributed to the depth of feeling that I transmit and that I find other people respond to. Often people write to me after seeing the show and tell me how often they cried or came to tears thinking about their parents, remembering their abuela's house, the little casita that they stayed in after school, the foods they ate, the way the families kept their home altars, what happened to the dead, the stories that were told, the memories. So I long ago determined that memory was a strategy for Chicanos and Latinos. It was a way of pulling back the curtain, reclaiming those cultural traditions, reminding ourselves that we have earned our place in this country